blue, the good men and women in blue. So let's do it, and let's also appreciate when they do the good things, right? You know what I mean? 7:44. Let's head into the KUAM News Zoom room here on the link, which is proudly brought to you by IT&E Carrier at 647 Cool. Also, East West Rental. Thank you so much for jumping on East West Rental, as well as Calvo Enterprises at 7:44 Tuesday, March 2nd. Public Auditor BJ Cruz in the KUAM News Zoom room. Good morning, Public Auditor.
Good morning, Chris.
I wanted to kind of start because we had Senator Talina Nelson on, I want to say it was last week. It was a really good interview. We had a blast, but she was talking about this audit that you had come out with about the port, and it was one of the settlements. And the gist of the audit was that this employee, was it employee Q? Was it employee Q, BJ?
Yeah.
Yeah, employee Q, the mysterious employee Q, who had been, was one of the Port 7, was reinstated. It ended up, like, through the audit that they did, that he was overpaid, like 100-some thousand. And then they also did some interesting things with the salary increment, right? So when he was, the time he was not at the port, when they awarded the back pay, they awarded it in a way, and they said, okay, so you were gone for X amount of years, and had you been employed at the port for those amount of years, you probably would have got like a super satisfactory employee evaluation, which comes with the highest increment. And so they went ahead and assumed that this employee would have got the highest evaluation and the highest increment, and they added all that stuff in, which is kind of like we talked about before, was one of the first times we've seen something like that. Anyway, so the Senator Nelson is the oversight of the port, and she had some issues with that, and she said that she was going to follow up with your office. So what kind of conversation have you had with the senator?
I haven't spoken to her since I made the presentation to her last, about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. Just before we released the audit, we presented our findings to her. And she was very gracious in accepting it, but she didn't say anything to us. Gracious. She just thanked us for our work.
Gracious, you mean like she was like, oh, that's interesting, or it was just like, oh, thanks for that?
Well, I mean, it wasn't argumentative. It was, she just accepted it as being a report and thanked us. Whereas sometimes you can get them where they'll respond in 37 pages.
Yeah, and that was kind of the thing that we had talked about, guys. If you remember when this audit came out, obviously they share the audit findings with the body that's being audited, and when they did this, they shared it with the port. The port GM and his, I'm assuming it's his communications people, responded to so many of the points raised in this audit. So many, it was like 37 pages of response. Was that a record, BJ?
Yes, it's usually a one-page letter, sometimes two, right. But it's fine. I mean, I trust my auditors, and the auditors responded to every single one of the assertions, and I'm proud of them for the work that they did. And I'm hoping everybody downloads our app, really, because then
Whoa. Do you have an app?
Yeah.
It's quite good, too.
Oh, hold on.
Yeah, it's quite good. Yeah, it's very comprehensive.
Yeah, I mean, trying to reach out to the community to make sure that we're easily accessible. And as soon as a new audit comes out, it goes up on the app, and you'll know it when it's happening. We released a financial audit yesterday on the GovGuam Retirement Fund. Last Friday, we released the audit,
the CARES Act,
on the expenses of the CARES Act as of December 31st of last year. And this month, I'm hoping to release a financial audit almost every single every single workday this month, because I'm pushing all of the agencies to make sure that we can get the GovGuam financial audit out by March 31st.
There were some issues with that. By the way, so you have an app. Do you also have a digital engagement manager?
Pardon?
Do you have a digital engagement manager, or do you do your own social media?
No, we don't have our own HR. Well, I got tired of using DOAs because it was taking so long. So I signed a MOU with the Attorney General, who was very generous in offering to have his HR staff review our applicants, and then we will do the final selection.
Yeah. Hey, so
you see,
have you heard from the AG's office? Because I know that the port right away after that audit that you came off with, they didn't like it, and they said, "Oh, Mr. AG, can you go ahead and look into BJ's audit?" So have you had any? Has there been any dialogue? Has the AG requested anything from your office?
no, there's been no contact with us. You know, Chris, while I have you on there, you know, with all the financial audits that we're doing and the procurements that we're doing, one of the things that I really would like to float, and with you, and hopefully it'll catch on with the senators, is ethics. I'm really concerned about ethics. I mean, I was when I was a legislator, and that's why I passed the requirement that you had to do ethics training within a certain number of months, and procurement training. But now I'm starting to actually think that ethics training should also be required of everyone that does procurement. You know, the government of Guam procurement is hundreds of millions a year. And we have no idea what's happening with these people that are doing procurement. Are they getting something on the side, under the table? In our office, thanks to my predecessor and also to the Association of Government Accountants, AGA, this is AGA month, by the way, so we want to recognize our certified government financial managers. But they require that all AGA members read a 3-page ethics list of practices and sign a certification that they've read it, and they do it annually. And in our office, every January 31st, every single member of the staff has to provide a certified statement that they've listing gifts that they've received from anyone, gifts that are in excess of $250, except for gifts that you receive from your immediate family members. And so I was thinking that also in procurement, you know, there was a requirement not only for the certification of taking the procurement class, but there was also trying to be an understanding that anyone that was involved in procurement also had to file a financial disclosure statement. I floated that idea with a couple of senators, and I'm hoping to float it with you today and the public as an idea that everybody that, you know, the only ones that have to file financial disclosures are those of us that are elected and those people that are appointed.
Right.
None of the deputies have to sign financial disclosure because they're not elected. The people that are in charge of procurement aren't required to sign a financial disclosure. So we have no idea what's happening with them, at least with the financial disclosures being filed. You know, you've gone through the financial disclosures of the Election Commission, I remember, because you've done all kinds of stories about who is worth what and who's making and how they're making it.
Right.
But I'd like to see that be a requirement also for everybody that's involved in procurement, so that we are assured that they are ethical and they're not doing strange things. I mean, you remember last year, no, it's almost 3 years ago now, where there was the inspector at Public Works who
Right. Yeah.
there was about whether or not he was involved in something.
Right.
I remember when I was building my house 30 years ago, every time the inspector from Public Works came down to the house, he always managed to have anywhere from $50 to $200 worth of church raffle tickets that he wanted to sell. I don't know how much of that actually got back to the church, but it was always, I need to sell these. And you're sitting there trying to figure out whether or not you want to get everything signed off today. And so, yeah, here's a check for whatever.
The old fundraiser ticket extortion.
Yeah.
BJ, so let me ask you this.
I think
it kind of sounds like you think that
the idea that we require those people that are out there making these mandates on people that are requiring certain things from people that they file financial disclosures, so we know that a inspector who's making $60,000 a year, you wonder how he can afford a $700,000 or $800,000 home.
Right.
But with a financial disclosure, you can at least be able to tell where how that's happening.
It kind of sounds like you think that there's something going on with procurement in the government of Guam that you want to float this idea, which I think it's a great idea. It sounds like, would this be something legislatively, Senator X would have to introduce something to kind of expand it to maybe even include deputy directors?
Yeah.
What does the law say right now about the ethics training, BJ? Who's required to take the ethics training?
The law only requires that those of us that were elected and those people that received confirmation from the legislature are the only ones that need to file a financial disclosure. So as a result, the directors who are confirmed by the legislature are required to do an annual financial disclosure, whereas the deputies are not required by law to be confirmed by the legislature. As a result, they aren't required to file financial disclosures. And people that are in some of the classified positions in procurement aren't required to file financial disclosure statements or to take ethics classes.
So that's the FDS, is the financial disclosures. What about the ethics training? So you're saying that you want to expand it to include people who are in charge of or performing procurement. Who else in the government of Guam is legally mandated to take the ethics training?
It's just that, the elected officials and those confirmed by the legislature.
All right. And so
we have to do it within 90 days of our election or 6 months of our appointment, our confirmation orders. I may have it backwards.
So who
within a certain period.
Who's responsible for making sure that happens? Because I keep getting tips about the ethics training and people aren't taking it.
now that the ethics commission is up, I may let it wait for them, but actually I would like to do a survey, and I've already spoken to one of my auditors about that. I neglected to give him the green light. He had sent me a note that I have to approve that he sends the letter out, and that's why the letter hasn't gone out. But I want to do a survey of all the agencies to find out who's complied. I mean, it's been a while since the election, and so everybody's should have already signed up for the courses.
Right, right.
I know because some people, I received a message from one of the accountants, and he was saying, "Do I have to take the ethics class taught by the government?" He says, "I have to do as an accountant, as a CPA, he has to do 4 units of ethics training a year to keep up his CPEs." I wrote back to him and I said, "Hey, I'm a lawyer and I'm also the public auditor. I have to do 4 units of CPE for my position in the office, and I have to do 2 units a year for my continuing legal education. But neither one of these 6 hours really meets the requirements of the government, the statute, because it has 10 things that are required that you need to know about the open government law, about ethics, about procurement, all kinds of things that aren't taught in regular ethics courses that the statute locally requires that you have an understanding about in order to to fulfill the ethics course for the local government."
Let's kick it up a notch when you talk about ethics training and financial disclosures and expanding the class of government employees who need to take the ethics training and file those financial disclosures. What about law enforcement? You know, and I watch a lot of law enforcement movies, and in these movies they have what they call like the Office of Personal Responsibility or whatever. And it's basically like these cops who police the cops, and they do things like they watch the bank account if they have any crazy, like, "Oh my God, how are you affording a mansion and 5 cars on a policeman's salary?" That kind of thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What would you think of that? And is that something that would be best handled by like the Guam Police Department or the relevant law enforcement agencies, or is that something that you think would be more suitable for some kind of like outside entity?
Well, most departments have that within their department, police department, but the ethics commission just hired a executive director who gets paid more than any of my staff. So hopefully the ethics commission will be able to be the one that finally takes this over and get that going. Because you're right. I mean, you go around and you try to figure out how people manage to afford certain things on what their income is. I mean, the joke was you drive by and you see this mega mansion somewhere, and the guy supposedly is a farm, doesn't do anything, and you're like, how does he make that money? Well, you find out it's drugs, and so yeah, or cars,
or cockfighting.
And so
okay, so
anyway, well, I'd like to float with you this morning as something that you might want to start talking about and thinking, maybe encouraging senators to call in or you talk to about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see who would oppose that.
Expanding the training and expanding the filing of financial disclosure.
But how are we doing right now with the ethics training, BJ? If we want to expand it, let's say what exists now, are people doing it? Do we need to make it tougher?
They're doing. I know that they're doing it because the Department of Interior does an ethics training, and I know I spoke to a government official who told me that she had 23 members of the staff, of various staff, taking the courses. And I said, it's a good course to take for for those of us that have to do our CPEs for accounting. I said, but please note that that does not fulfill the requirement for the GovGuam ethics training, because I sent her the statute, because the local ethics training statute is very specific about the number of things that needs to be done. So I know that they were trying to see if that was a way to do it, because with a pandemic, trying to find people to teach the courses is difficult. I mean, GCC, God thank them, they've found people to teach the ethics course. I mean, the procurement courses, but they can't get enough of the teachers to teach the courses for all the people that are required to take it. And now if we're going to do ethics, which entity is going to take the ethics responsibility, and who's going to teach it, or whether or not that can be done just virtually. Have somebody do an online, course with it, and people are just made to sit through the online course, and that way you don't have to hire someone every several months to do the training.
So when you look out at the lay of the land, and you sift through like media reports and just being where you are and having the authority and the responsibility to kind of be that check and balance, do you see a lot of instances where things are happening that if people had taken their ethics training, maybe they wouldn't be happening?
I'm hoping, or at least they'd at least think about it, because if they thought about it, they'd realize that, some intrepid investigative reporter like yourself will go down to the election commission and ask for a copy of all the financial disclosures and go through it and start asking questions like you did a few years ago.
Right on. So that's something we talk about here. Expanding filing of financial disclosures for employees who are in positions where they stand to gain financially, like procurement or, inspectors, or, I guess even certain types of law enforcement. I guess maybe we should bring the Ethics Commission on in a couple weeks and find out where they're at and how they and if they are responsible for pushing that training and whatnot. What else is going on with you, BJ, in closing?
Just trying to get all the financial disclosures out. I mean, last year, Ed Burns and I convinced Speaker Terlahi not to mandate the March 31st deadline and allow us to try to work it through. And thankfully, Ed Burns convened a Zoom meeting of all the financial officers of the government of Guam, and he told them that we need to get the financial disclosure. The financial audit out by the end of the month, because the bond market is looking to see that. They consider governments that can issue and release their financial audits within 6 months as well run and worthy of investing in. And so, and I have all the agencies on Gantt charts, and some of them I'm actually meeting with them weekly.
Hey, there was an issue last year. I remember that you said like Gura was taking their sweet time providing you with documents for the GovGuam wide financial audit. Are you having any issues this year with agencies who are just starting?
Well, no, because what I did at the very beginning of the term, last October, was I got everybody on and I said, hey, I want you to give me a Gantt chart. Tell me how you're going to be able to finish your financial audit by March 31st. And my auditors and I are following up with them. Anytime we find out that they're lagging behind, I get them on the Zoom and I just rail into them. And if they're not getting it done, I get them back the next week and jump all over them about why is it that you haven't provided these documents and why isn't this done? And I'm forcing it through. You know, I mean, when I spoke to before Speaker Chalahi's committee last year, I told him, I mean, it's like trying to straighten my teeth. It's I'm tightening all the screws to change this. And thankfully, Ed Byrne recognizes the importance of getting it out early. And now we're probably going to have all the departments on a year-long Gantt chart, or where they have monthly closings and quarterly reporting so that he knows what's happening. And I'm assured that the reports are ready on a monthly or quarterly basis so that when we get to September 30th, I know that the next day all the documents go in and we can get them out as soon as possible.
All right, so BJ, we got to run at the top of the hour, but so basically you haven't heard from the AG's office. The port said, AG, look into this audit. There's been no communication. You also haven't heard back from Senator Nelson after presenting the port audit findings. And you're also calling for more financial disclosures, more ethics training for more government employees.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, BJ. Keep in touch. There you go, Public Auditor BJ Cruz. It's 810 KUAM TV Land. Thanks for jamming with us. There's a lot of great programming coming up on KUAM TV. Of course, you can jump over to our Facebook Live feed where we're about to get a special guest here. We have Moniaka and Francesca Dioro and Katie McManus, the founder of Mantras for the Marianas. They're